And our friend Clay Henry joining us for the next couple of segments on Halftime. As usual on a Wednesday, the publisher, editor of Hawgs Illustrated, got the baseball issue coming out, which always means that it's going to put a smile on your face, Clay. Won't it? You love writing baseball, don't you?
Oh, yeah. It is my favorite issue of the year, and I think it was maybe our third or fourth year. This is year 30 for Hawgs Illustrated.
Wow.
It was our third or fourth year I decided to add an issue, and we made it the baseball preview, printed it the last week in January. It's the date, the cover date is February 15th, so when we put it on the newsstand, so it'll stay there, 2 or 3 weeks. You post-date them. But it's been one of our most popular issues. It's my favorite issue, and because I can dive into it really before anybody else. And Dave Van Horn and whoever's been the position coaches, pitching and hitting, have always been gracious with their time, and a little bit different this year because you can't do in-person interviews. But first of all, Dave Van Horn is a wonderful interview. He just is terrific. And, I've always said, hey, I need 30 to 45 minutes, and it'll be 2 hours, and we'll just sit and talk, and just about it. And we could be talking about a lot of different things. Could be duck hunting. It could be anything. But, I consider him a good friend, and we just, we talked last Friday, and earlier in the week I'd had an hour with Nate Thompson, an hour with Matt Hobbs, and both of those guys are terrific interviews. And Hobbs may be as good as anybody I've ever interviewed in any sport. I'm talking about a coach. And you better be careful what you ask him, because he's going to talk for 5 minutes on every question, and then it's like, then you just, did you get to all the things you wanted to get to? So make sure that you have a good priority. But he was terrific. So I've got a lot. This issue, it's pretty much all baseball, 40 pages, and it's got I'd say 15,000 words on baseball, maybe 15, 20 pictures. So it's a fun issue, and baseball's been so good that it's just the subject matter is just wonderful. We've got a center spread. It's about 10 pages that Matt Jones did. This year is the 25th anniversary of Baum Stadium, so we went back and had 25 best moments, and then Matt kind of interviewed Norm DeBryan and had some stuff from Dave Van Horn on just the what's happened at Baum and what it is. So a lot of fun stuff in this issue.
Well, good. So then I'm going to let you take this segment in the direction you'd like. Where you want to go? You want to go lineup? You want to go pitching? You want to go schedule? What do you think?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about pitching, because I listened to you yesterday, and that kind of sounds like where you have the iffy feeling. Not sure, and pitching is it doesn't really matter how good you are. It matters. I'm talking about stuff. Like can you break it? You got all these pitches, and can you throw velocity? We've seen midweek starters come in, against the Razorbacks that throw 85, 86, but they can throw strikes and they can pitch, and that's what's most important. Well, obviously, if you got somebody with velocity that can do both, well, then you've got an Isaiah Campbell. But we didn't get last season for some of these guys that have been here a little while to get their innings. So they got them. Some of them went and pitched in the summer, but they don't have SEC experience. And
that's why I'm going with so many. That's why I used
and that's fair.
Yesterday.
Yeah, and that's fair. So it's when you talk to Hobbs, his feeling is that they've got the most pitching arms. I'm talking about high velocity guys of any Power 5 program in the last decade, and he's seen them all. And so the talent is there. Now, the problem is, picking out who to give the innings early. They pitched 16 pitchers in the first 16 games last year, and then they were ready to go to conference play, and I think they had figured it out. And Vermillion, had started the year with a hamstring, and then he was back to pitching. And then they kind of had figured out, some of the young guys that they could count on. And, Zach Morris was one of them. And, Caden Monk was kind of coming on and, that kind of stuff. But two or three things on this staff to note. And one of them is the lefty grad senior transfer from University of Houston, Lael Lockhart, 6'3", 225, lefty, and he throws 89 to 92. Well, that's not on the upper end of their velocity, but that is still really good velocity. He can hit his spots with 4 pitches, tough as nails. Matt said they pitched him, brought him in the middle of the innings. They started him. They pitched him in long relief in the fall and said he's just tough as nails. And I said, well, how'd you know about him? He said, well, we saw his name in the portal. He was a Friday night starter the last 2 years at Houston, lefty. And I think he'll pitch on the weekend. I mean, he'll be a starting pitcher. And I think, that you already mentioned, I think y'all talked in the last segment about Bolden and Wicklander. And Wicklander started off slow in the fall and then picked it up his last 2 or 3 outings and 2 or 3 bullpens, and then has been terrific in his bullpens in January. His velocity has jumped, command of more than one pitch. He's got 3 or 4 pitches now. I think you're going to see kind of the Wicklander, what they thought would have happened last year, and he just was off at the start of last year. Really good as a freshman, and I think he'll be a high strikeout guy, and be able to give him. He's up in his numbers already in the bullpen. I think he'll be able to give him the 4 or 5 innings that you need early. The guy that Matt really talked about that he thinks will be the story this year is Kevin Kopps, and he's a 6th-year guy, a 3-year captain. Had an off year. Really, last fall wasn't really good, and then his ERA last year in the few times that he pitched was 8. He was on his way to pitching himself to the bench, at the start of SEC play last year when they stopped the season. He has kind of reinvented himself. He's lost some weight. The headline of my column says "Thin to Win," and I'm going to go a little deeper in that. But he has gained the depth in his cutter, and it's a strike now. And they said, last year in the fall and the spring that it kind of backed up in the zone and was a fat pitch, and Matt said it was kind of in the cement mixer. It's that pitch that everybody just smoked. But they couldn't hit him in the fall, and he's looked terrific in his bullpens this January. And so I think you'll see him in long relief and be a guy like maybe 3 years ago that he pitched 30 times. He's going to be a guy that they trust based on what he did. Their hitters just could not touch him and had that devastating cutter that moves 6 or 7 inches, and you think it's the fastball, and you swing and you miss it by 6 or 7 inches. And so anyway, and then how much more time we got?
Got about 1:30.
Okay.
And I think you wanted to bring up Peyton Paulette, right?
I did. So Peyton Paulette, who's sophomore, he's looks like Blaine Knight, 6'3", 170, thin, and I'm sorry, 6'1", 175. I just gave you Caden Monk, who's another thin to win guy. Mm-hmm. But Paulette was throwing like 92, 93, which is good, and he goes to summer baseball. And Matt gets a call from his coach at Santa Barbara, who he knew, and he says, "Your guy's hitting 96, 97." He goes, "No, you recalibrate your gun. That's not what he throws." And then he starts getting calls from scouts, and these are all guys with different guns. And he says, "He's at 97 now." Wow! So he comes back to school and he touches 98, and he has figured it all out. So that guy is electric, and I think he could be a closer, but he's going to pitch.
That's really interesting. And I've got a list of so many pitchers here that I think can make a difference, and that kind of touches on something you brought up a moment. I'll just finish this segment with that thought. Like, the opportunities for these pitchers to make their mark might come early in the season. They're going to have to grab those opportunities and do something with it, because if they don't, there's going to be somebody waiting in the wings.
Yeah, but COVID might decide some of this. Yeah, COVID might. A guy missed 2 weeks, and then somebody's got his spot when he comes back.
All right, stay with us. More baseball talk. We'll dig into basketball, too, with Clay here on Halftime. Clay Henry with us for this last segment. Questions for Clay at 877-377-6963. Good to be with you on this Wednesday. We talked about the Arkansas pitching staff in the last segment, and I feel like one segment doesn't even do them justice, because you got, it's like 22 or 23 pitchers that could make a difference. But wanted to talk a little bit about the other side of things here, Clay, and lineup-wise, there certainly are a few of these positions that are set in stone. Casey Opitz catching, Robert Moore second base, Jalen Battles shortstop, Christian Franklin center field. I don't know if any other position, though, is locked up as of right now.
No, and they have the ability, because of nice combination of right-left, to be able to platoon at some positions. And you kind of think Goodhart's going to be the DH, because he's still not able to throw the way you want him to. He's better, and it might, you've got 3 more months of the season, there's still going to be some more development. But he's defensively, I'm not sure he's there yet with what you could put there if he was the DH. And it could be somebody like Cullen Smith, and that's a name that nobody has heard of. He transferred from East Tennessee State, was really a good player at that level, and set out last year because he transferred, and he led him in hitting in the fall, had a really good summer. He might be a type guy that just, and he's lefty, can hit, so he might, play first base or maybe someplace else. He can play in the infield, corner infield. Could, if you have some COVID issues, could play other places on the infield. And then, there's just a really talented mix of newcomers in Brady Slavens, who's a National Junior College Player of the Year, played 1 year at Wichita State as early enrollee, left-handed power. I mean, he could hit 20 home runs, and he down that right field porch. It's pretty short down there now. At Baum Walker. And
they shortened it by a few feet because of the new building. Yeah,
you got it. And I think left-handed power is going to be. It used to be nobody wanted to come here as a left-handed power hitter. And it's like the wind screams in from the southwest wind. But there's some interesting dynamics with that new building. It kind of blocks the wind, and if you hit something that's not towering, it jumps out in right field really quick now. So those lefties with power, it's, and Caden Wallace is, the freshman that's just a terrific player. I mean, he's one of those guys that with a bigger draft probably wouldn't have made it to campus. With a 5-round draft, there weren't as many high school players taken. It was college players that were taken in that 5 rounds. So that's and I think Braden Webb in left. I think Nesbitt at third. So I mean, those are some possibilities. And you got some guys like Zach Gregory's lefty that that could jump in there somewhere. Battles is really a good defensive shortstop. 6'2", has range, and both Dave Van Horn and Nate Thompson said his gun is kind of like he doesn't show it until he goes in the hole, and then boom, it is a laser over there. So, defensively, we just kind of tolerated Casey Martin the last couple of years with his defense because of his bat and his speed. But they're going to be better at shortstop with Battles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I was really impressed with what I saw from him in the fall. Instincts, smoothness.
You got it. Yep.
Just like you're saying, a guy that knows when he needs to show the arm. That was another difference with Casey. It always
scouts love him.
He didn't flip it very much. He always fired it. I saw Battles flip it when he could. All right, so it sounds like we'll have a pretty good baseball team, but you know what? Everybody else in the SEC is dealing with the same talent load.
Yep.
And I don't think I don't know if we're even fully prepared for what the level of baseball might be like. And then there's the other flip of the coin on that, Clay, and I wonder what you think about this. A lot of these guys, they only played like 10 games last season. And whatever happened in the summer, they didn't have the normal ebb and flow of what their seasons are like. I wonder if there might be some rustiness that's evident, even more so than usual, for the first couple of weeks, just because they haven't played as many games as they're used to.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say is they did have, a full fall. And fall was more interesting and entertaining for, the few people that saw it because of the excitement level. Everybody was just, sometimes you've got the veterans that are out there in the fall, and it's like, man, they're tired. They had a long SEC grind, maybe all the way to Omaha, and then they, played some in the summer, and it's like, man, that coming back to fall, it's, they kind of just tolerated it. But that wasn't the way it was this year. So I think the intensity of the fall will help them a little bit as we roll into, the start of the college season. And that's, from what I've heard from scouts and other people, that's the way it was at all the campus, that the fall was really intense and you had a lot of competition. There's deep rosters everywhere. So I think SEC baseball this year, there's been talk of late that college baseball used to be Class A, similar to Class A in minor leagues, and it's elevated. It's like Double A now, and the position players and the depth of the rosters and the velocity, it's going to be something. And I mean, it's so sad that we're not going to have the ability for everybody to go to every game, because I think even in the midweek games, some of these pitchers are just electric. That you're going to see, guys pitch that you just, a young guy to kind of watch out for, Jackson Wiggins, and he throws 95 like it's me and you playing catch. I mean, it's just, and he's 6'6", 250. He looks like an Isaiah Campbell. So, yeah, it's going to be fun, and I'm excited, and I've put in the time the last 2 weeks to kind of learn this team, and the more I study, the more I like it, and just the idea that you got leaders like Opitz and Copps and Robert Moore's a leader, even though he's only 18 years old. He's just got so much experience.
It's going to be a fun baseball season, isn't it, boys? It's going to be a lot of fun. Clay Henry, the publisher of Hawgs Illustrated, joining us here on Halftime. Clay, we got a few more minutes left. Let's transition over to the hardwood. You got a big one tonight against the Auburn Tigers. And, Clay, every game is a must-win, but this game tonight has a different feel that if this must be as much of a must-win as any game this season, just to get some confidence back in this basketball team.
Yeah, and they've stunk it up the last two games. There's no way to get around it. And you feel a little different today after watching Alabama rip LSU. But they had them by 40, and with 8 minutes to go, I was looking up what the NCAA record for threes. They reset their SEC record with 23. But if the last 8 minutes, the starters were out, and if they'd left Petty in and Quinterly in, they would have set the NCAA record of threes. I mean, they probably would have got 30 or 32, and it was something to watch, and it kind of changes your thoughts on what happened with Arkansas and Alabama. But even having said that, there's things that they got to fix. They've got to play the three-point shooter better, because Auburn can shoot the three too, and they've got to figure out point guard. And I think that you're going to see some things emerge, like Justin Smith, as he plays more and more after coming back from that surgery, and that's and you got to get Desi Sills going. I mean, those are two guys that you figured were going to be, kind of like stalwarts for this team, and that has been kind of ripped away over the last month.
Last thing before we let you go here, aside from Moses Moody, who needs to have a big game tonight to get the Razorbacks a W?
Well, you can't have guys all down the roster with 0, 2, 1, 3. I mean, just a lot of guys got to pick it up a little bit. If you can have 4 or 5 guys with 6, 7, 8, then it changes everything. And you can't have J.D. Note and Moses Moody scoring 40, but they took 40 shots. Mm-hmm. So those two guys have got to be more efficient, and then you've got to get some help from some other guys. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. You just think they'll play better at home, and Auburn's a dangerous team. They got their point guard back, and it's they're starting to get a little bit of a swagger. But this is one of those games that you kind of circle and say, well, it continued to drop into the abyss, or it's a point where you turned it around.
Clay, appreciate you, man. How about when we have you on next week, you and I compare what the lineup could look like 1 through 9. That sounds like fun.
Well, I got mine already, so you need to get to work on it,
Come
okay?
on, Phil.
All right. So I'll start working on that when the show's over, and we'll talk about it next week.
Okay, boys.
Thanks, Clay.
Enjoyed it. Thank you all for having me.
Illustrated.